On a recent family vacation, my daughter-in-law snapped at the hotel clerk. "Don't bother with the old lady. She's just here to help." My son chuckled at her words. Unbeknownst to her, I was the owner of the establishment. What I did next left her shaken. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end of my tale, and let me know what city you're reading this from so I can see how far my story travels." I had been eagerly anticipating this getaway for months. At 68 years old, chances to bond with my son, Ethan, and his family were rare. When he proposed a week in San Diego, my heart lifted with hope. Perhaps I could finally connect with Lila, my daughter-in-law, who had remained distant throughout their 6 years of marriage. The 5-hour drive to the Ocean Breeze Hotel was filled with Ethan and Lila discussing luxurious spa packages, golf outings, and gourmet meals, barely acknowledging my presence. Whenever I tried to chime in, suggesting activities for the kids or sharing ideas for family fun, Lila would respond curtly, and Ethan would brush me off entirely. I should have noticed the warning signs, but my desire to strengthen our family ties blinded me to their behavior. The Ocean Breeze Hotel was one of my proudest accomplishments, though my family was unaware. After losing my husband when Ethan was only 10, I built my hospitality empire from scratch. Starting with a modest inn, I worked tirelessly, cleaning rooms and handling bookings. Over time, I expanded to 15 properties across 4 states. I always kept my business life separate from my family, wanting Ethan to value me for myself, not my wealth. As we pulled up to the hotel's grand entrance, I felt a familiar surge of pride seeing the manicured lawns and attentive staff hurrying to assist guests. It had taken 4 years to acquire Ocean Breeze and 3 more to transform it into a masterpiece. Every detail, from the gleaming tile floors to the elegant light fixtures, reflected my vision. Ethan handed the car keys to the valet, while Lila adjusted her designer scarf, her dark hair impeccably styled. At 32, significantly younger than Ethan's 50 years, her beauty was polished by high-end stylists and fitness coaches. "Make sure we get the executive suite," she told Ethan as we neared the entrance. "I don't care if it's booked, get it done." Ethan agreed without question, and it pained me to see how much he catered to her. The assertive child I raised had become a man who rarely acted without her approval. Stepping into the sophisticated lobby, I couldn't help but smile at the familiar hum of activity. Sarah, the front desk supervisor, glanced up and recognized me instantly, but I gave her a subtle signal to stay quiet. I wasn't ready to reveal my identity. "Good afternoon," Sarah greeted warmly yet professionally. "Welcome to the Ocean Breeze Hotel. How may I assist you?" "Reservation under Bennett," Ethan said. "We should have the executive suite." Sarah checked her system swiftly. "Here's your booking, Mr. Bennett. It's for our oceanfront deluxe suite, but the executive suite is reserved for your entire stay." Lila's expression tightened, her eyes flashing with annoyance. "That's ridiculous," she said sharply. "Do you even know who we are?" "I specifically asked for the executive suite when we booked." Sarah stayed composed, though her posture stiffened slightly. "I'm sorry for any confusion, Mrs. Bennett. The deluxe suite is beautiful, with a private terrace and ocean views." "I'm not interested in some mediocre room," Lila cut in, her voice loud enough to draw glances from other guests. "I want the executive suite, and I want it now." I stepped forward, hoping to calm things down. "Lila, perhaps we could—" But before I could finish, she turned on me, her face twisted with anger. "Stay out of this," she barked, her voice reverberating through the lobby. "Sarah, or whatever your name is, ignore this old lady. She's nobody, just the help." We dragged along. The lobby fell silent, my face flushed with humiliation as her words sank in. But she wasn't finished. "Don't waste time on the old woman," she sneered, gesturing at me like I was insignificant. "She's just here to babysit. Focus on us." My heart raced, and my throat tightened. In my 68 years, no one had ever spoken to me with such contempt, especially not in public. But what hurt more was what followed. Ethan burst into laughter. Not a nervous chuckle, but a genuine, hearty laugh, as if his wife's public attack on me was hilarious. "Oh, Lila," he said, grinning. "You're too much. But you're right. Mom, just let us deal with this. Go wait somewhere." His betrayal struck like a knife. This was my son, the boy I raised single-handedly, for whom I worked endless hours to provide a good life, now laughing at my pain. Sarah's face paled, her eyes reflecting a mix of shock and empathy that only deepened my hurt. Whispers rippled through the lobby, and I noticed some guests pulling out their phones, likely recording the scene. "Ma'am," Sarah said gently, maintaining her professionalism, "would you like to relax in our lounge while we sort out the room?" Before I could respond, Lila sighed dramatically. "Yes. Take her somewhere she won't cause a scene. And keep an eye on her, she tends to wander off." Ethan laughed again. The weight of their cruelty pressed down on me as strangers stared. I wanted to flee from this elegant lobby, from my spiteful daughter-in-law, from my dismissive son, and never look back. But a spark of the resilience that built my empire kept me grounded. I met Sarah's gaze, her eyes conveying silent understanding. She knew who I was and that I could have Lila removed in an instant, but I held back. Lifting my small bag, I walked to the elevator with my head held high, despite the shame trailing me. Behind me, Lila continued berating Sarah about the suite, her voice dripping with entitlement. As the elevator doors closed, I caught Sarah's eye once more. She gave a subtle nod, signaling she was sorry and awaiting my cue. I had built this business from nothing, employing over 250 people across my properties. I was respected in the industry, admired for my fairness and vision. Yet in that lobby, I was reduced to a humiliated old woman, mocked by my son's wife while he laughed. As the elevator ascended to the 10th floor, each passing number fueled a growing resolve within me. The pain was raw, but determination was taking root. The next morning, I woke in a room with a stunning view of the Pacific, waves crashing gently against the shore. The sunrise painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a sight that would usually lift my spirits, but I felt hollow. Sleep had eluded me, haunted by Lila's cutting words. "She's just the help," and Ethan's laughter. I replayed the scene, wondering if I could have acted differently, though I knew the real issue was how my own family devalued me. A quiet knock interrupted my thoughts. Opening the door, I found Ethan standing there, looking uneasy but showing no sign of regret. Ethan stepped into my room that morning, barely glancing at me. "Mom, we're heading to breakfast. Lila wants you to look after the kids by the pool after, so we can enjoy the spa." No greeting, no acknowledgement of the previous day's scene in the lobby, just another task presented as a request. "Ethan," I said softly, "about yesterday." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Let's not dwell on it, Mom. Lila was just frustrated about the sweet mix-up. You know how she is when things don't go her way." Frustrated. She had publicly shamed me, called me the help in front of strangers. "She insulted me, Ethan," I said, my voice steady. "She yelled at me in front of everyone." He avoided my gaze, shifting uncomfortably. "She didn't mean it like that. That's just Lila being dramatic. Can we drop it? This is supposed to be a vacation." I searched his face for a trace of the boy who used to run to me with seashells, calling them treasures, who once said I was his hero. That boy was gone, replaced by a 52-year-old man who prioritized his wife's whims over his mother's dignity. "Fine," I said, the word heavy on my tongue. "I'll watch the kids." His face relaxed. "Great. We'll probably be out all day, spa, then lunch, maybe some shopping. That's okay, right?" It wasn't okay. I had hoped this trip would be a chance to bond with my grandchildren and feel like part of the family. Instead, I was being relegated to unpaid childcare, but I nodded, knowing resistance would only spark more conflict. I'd learned long ago that keeping the peace often meant staying silent. In the dining room, Lila had secured a prime table overlooking the ocean, commanding the space as if she ran the hotel. She was already issuing demands to the staff. "I want freshly pressed grapefruit juice, not that bottled nonsense," she told our server, a young woman named Mia, whom I recognized from past visits. "And the eggs need to be poached for exactly 2 minutes. No more, no less." Mia kept her composure, but her tight smile betrayed her strain. I had trained my staff to deliver exceptional service, but Lila was pushing their limits. My grandchildren, Ava and Liam, ages 7 and 9, sat quietly, engrossed in their tablets. They didn't look up as I approached. "Morning, sweetheart," I said to Ava, reaching to smooth a stray braid. Lila's hand darted out, stopping me. "Don't touch her hair. It was just done, and I don't want it ruined." I withdrew my hand, stung. Ava didn't even glance up. "Kids, say hi to Grandma Ellen," Ethan muttered, sounding distracted. "Hi," they mumbled in unison, eyes fixed on their screens. I took the only seat left, facing away from the ocean view. Lila had ensured the best spots for her family, leaving me the least desirable one, as if I were an afterthought. "Ellen," Lila said, not meeting my eyes. "After breakfast, take the kids to the pool. Apply sunscreen every hour. Ava's skin is sensitive, and if she gets even slightly red, that's on you." I nodded, biting back my response. "And keep them out of the deep end," she continued. "No poolside snacks, they're full of junk. If they need anything, call me right away. Don't try to handle it on your own." Each command felt like a jab, a reminder that she didn't trust me with my own grandchildren. "How long will you be at the spa?" I asked. Lila's eyes met mine, icy and dismissive. "As long as we feel like this is our getaway, not yours." "You're here to assist." Ethan scrolled through his phone, disengaged, as I wondered when he'd become someone who let his wife treat his mother like a servant. After breakfast, I took Ava and Liam to the pool, trying to spark a conversation, but their attention stayed glued to their tablets. Around us, other families laughed and played, while we felt like strangers sharing a space. "Grandma," Ava said suddenly, and my heart lifted, hoping for a moment of connection. "Mom says you used to work as a maid for wealthy people. Is that true?" Her words hit like a blow. I had never cleaned houses. I had built a business empire from the ground up, creating jobs and earning respect in a competitive industry. Yet Lila had spun a narrative that reduced me to a caricature. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "I own hotels. Like this one." Liam glanced up from his tablet. "Mom says you make up stories about being successful because you're embarrassed about being broke." The cruelty of his words took my breath away. Lila hadn't just demeaned me in public. She was poisoning my grandchildren's perception of me, painting me as a delusional nobody. "Your grandma isn't broke, and I don't make up stories," I said firmly. Ava shrugged. "That's just what Mom says. She says you live in a cramped apartment and pretend to be wealthy to feel better. In truth, I lived in a spacious condo with a view of the coastline, worth more than most people's homes. But to my grandchildren, I was a pitiful figure clinging to false stories. For the next 5 hours, I sat by the pool, watching kids who barely acknowledged me while their parents indulged in my hotel's amenities. Other guests occasionally chatted with me, and I responded politely, but inside, I felt emptier with each passing moment. When Ethan and Lila returned, glowing from their spa treatments and a lavish lunch, Lila's manicure was flawless, her appearance pristine, pampered at a facility I owned, on my dime. "How were the kids?" Ethan asked, eyes on his phone. "They were fine," I said, unable to voice the truth. That they saw me as a liar, that their mother had sabotaged any chance of a bond. "Good," Lila said curtly. "You'll watch them again tomorrow. We've got a golf game in the morning and dinner with some new friends from the spa." Ethan nodded along, not bothering to ask if I minded, oblivious to the fact that I might want to enjoy my vacation too. That night, alone in my room with its breathtaking view of the sea, I faced the reality of this so-called family trip. It wasn't a vacation, it was a setup where I was cast as the help, footing the bill for the privilege of being disrespected. As I listened to the waves, the pain burned, but a new feeling emerged. Fierce, focused anger. Anger at being undervalued, at the lies, at being treated as insignificant when I had built everything around us. By morning, I knew things had to change. The third day began much like the others, with Lila issuing instructions while Ethan passively agreed. They had planned a day trip to a nearby vineyard, leaving me with the kids. "Make sure they eat lunch at 12:30 sharp," Lila said, adjusting her earrings with precision. "Ava gets irritable if her blood sugar drops, so keep the protein bars I packed ready." I wanted to say I'd raised a child before, that I knew how to care for kids, but I'd learned that speaking up only led to more criticism and subtle jabs. "We'll probably be back by 7, Ethan added, eyes on his phone, oblivious to the weight of their expectations. Ethan and Lila were preparing to head out, and I overheard Lila on the phone, her voice dripping with a saccharine tone she used when she thought she was being sly. "No, we can't do dinner tonight. I'm stuck with the kids again. It's such a hassle, but it's just a few more days. Once this is over, we won't have to deal with her anymore." Her words, especially the way she said, "once this is over," sent a shiver through me. It wasn't just about the trip ending. After they left, I took Ava and Liam to the hotel's youth program, one I'd designed to give families more freedom during their stay. The staff engaged the kids wonderfully, and for the first time since we arrived, I saw them smile and play with other children. With a few hours to myself, I wandered the grounds, seeing my hotel through a guest's eyes rather than an owner's. That's when I overheard something that shifted everything. Near the poolside lounge, I caught familiar voices coming from a shaded cabana. Ethan and Lila were supposed to be at the vineyard, but there they were, speaking in low tones with another couple I didn't recognize. "She's getting up there in age," Lila was saying. "And people don't live forever, you know what I mean?" The other woman laughed. "Lila, you're ruthless." "Just realistic," Lila replied. "Ethan's an only child, so everything will come to us eventually. It's just a matter of how long we have to wait." My stomach churned. I edged closer, concealed by a tall fern. "What about Ellen?" the unfamiliar man asked. "Doesn't she have her own money?" Then Ethan's voice, the one I once trusted implicitly, cut through. "My mom? Nah, she's barely scraping by. Lives in a tiny apartment, surviving on a pension. I've been supporting her for years." The lies rolled off his tongue effortlessly. "I lived in a $4 million condo, my investments generating more monthly income than most earned annually. But in Ethan's narrative, I was a charity case he grudgingly propped up. This trip is such a drag because of her," Lila added. "We have to bring her along since she can't afford anything herself. It's like dragging around a needy stray." The other woman made a sympathetic noise. "That must be exhausting. Does she expect you to care for her when she's really old?" "Not a chance," Lila said with a cold laugh. "The second she needs serious care, she's going into some state-run facility. I'm not turning my home into a nursing home for a useless old lady." I steadied myself against the fern, my knees weak. They weren't just talking about my natural decline, they were plotting to discard me the moment I became inconvenient. But Ethan's next words broke me entirely. "The funniest part is she thinks she's somebody," he said, his tone laced with mockery. "She spins these wild tales about being a businesswoman. It's pathetic, like she's clinging to some fantasy to feel relevant." "Is it dementia?" the man asked. "Maybe," Ethan replied. "Or maybe she's just desperate to matter. Either way, it's embarrassing. Yesterday, she told the kids she owns hotels." "Hotels! Can you believe it?" Their laughter sliced through me like a blade. "At least we won't have to hear her nonsense much longer," Lila said. 5 years, maybe 10, and we'll be free to live without pretending to care. A useless old lady who never amounted to anything." I stood frozen behind the fern, my world crumbling. This wasn't just idle gossip about a bothersome relative, it was my son and his wife discussing my death like it was a long-awaited holiday. The best part, Lila continued, is how grateful she is for any scrap of attention, like this trip. She actually thinks we wanted her here. She doesn't realize we only brought her to watch the kids so we could enjoy ourselves. More laughter, more heartless disdain. Does she even chip in for anything? The other woman asked. Please, Lila scoffed. She's useless with money. Ethan pays for everything, her groceries, her bills, this whole trip. She's nothing but a burden. Another lie. I'd been financially supporting Ethan for years, covering part of his car payments, funding the kids' private school, even paying for Lila's extravagant shopping habits. The credit card bills that arrived at my address were staggering, yet I paid them without protest, believing I was helping my family. She's good for one thing, Ethan said. Free babysitting. She's so desperate for our approval, she'll do whatever we ask. It's almost amusing. It really is, Lila added, watching her try so hard to win us over, buying the kids pricey toys. It's pathetic. I stepped back, covering my mouth to silence a gasp. The lies were a betrayal, but hearing them mock my life as a pitiful joke was devastating. They weren't just taking my money, they were stripping away my dignity and legacy, reducing it to something trivial and laughable. My mind flashed back to the lobby incident. I'd been so humiliated that I didn't want to call them out, hoping to shield Ethan from his wife's behavior. But now I saw he was complicit, laughing along as I became the punchline. I had been so proud of my achievements, of the life I built for my family, but they'd turned my hard work into a mockery. I was just a cash machine, a free nanny, a pitiful old woman they couldn't wait to be rid of. A fierce resolve ignited within me, not the fleeting anger of the previous night, but a cold, unshakable determination. They thought I was worthless, a joke. I would show them what this useless old lady was capable of. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. She answered immediately, her voice tinged with concern. Ma'am, is everything okay? It's fine, Sarah, I said calmly. I need you to handle something for me. I returned to the youth program and collected Ava and Liam. They barely glanced up from their tablets as I took their hands. Come on, kids, I said. We're going on a little adventure. Liam frowned. Mom said we have to stay here. Your mom's mistaken, I replied. Let's go. We headed to the beach, where I set aside my phone and wallet. We built sandcastles, splashed in the shallows, and I showed them how to hunt for shells. I shared stories about their dad as a boy, and for a brief moment, it felt like a true family outing. But the weight of what lay ahead lingered in my chest. That evening, Ethan and Lila returned, glowing from their vineyard tour and wine. They strolled into my room, expecting to drop off the kids and head to dinner, but I stood in the doorway, blocking their path. We're ready to go out, Lila said, barely glancing at me, her focus on the kids. You can turn in for the night. Not quite, I said, my voice steady as a calm sea. She looked at me, a spark of annoyance in her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, you'll need to call the front desk and reserve a new room for tonight. You'll be checking out tomorrow. Ethan and Lila stared at me, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. What's going on, Mom? Ethan asked, his voice laced with confusion. Don't act clueless, I replied, my tone firm. I heard your conversation by the poolside lounge. I know exactly what you've been saying about me. Lila's expression shifted from bewilderment to rage. You were spying on us? She snapped. You had no right! I own this hotel, Lila, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. I have every right to decide what happens here, and I've decided you're leaving. I pulled a folder from my bag and handed it to Ethan. It detailed every cent of financial support I'd provided over the years. His eyes widened as he scanned the figures, realizing the extent of my contributions. You've been lying to me? He asked, his voice trembling as he turned to Lila. She's the liar, Lila shrieked. She doesn't own anything. She's just a pathetic old woman who scrubs floors for a living. Just then, Sarah, the front desk supervisor, entered with security. I heard there was an issue, she said, her gaze steady on me, her demeanor calm and professional. Sarah, tell her! Lila demanded, jabbing a finger at me. Tell her she doesn't own this hotel! Sarah glanced at me, and I gave a subtle nod. Mrs. Ellen Bennett is not only the owner of the Ocean Breeze Hotel, Sarah said, but the sole proprietor of all 15 Ocean Breeze properties across the country. She's our founder, our CEO, and the reason this place exists. Lila's face drained of color, her eyes darting between Sarah and me in panic. Ethan stood frozen, the folder in his hand a stark reminder of the lies he'd spun. What is this? Lila stammered. It means, I said, my voice brimming with conviction. You're checking out tomorrow morning, and you'll be paying your own bill. Every spa session, every dinner, every drink, it's all going on your credit card. You can't do this, Lila shouted. Oh, I can, I said, a faint smile crossing my lips. And I will, I turned to Ethan. And you, my son, I said. No more financial help. No more car payments. No more school fees. You're on your own now. Ethan's face fell. Mom, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to discuss, I said. You chose to laugh while your wife humiliated me. You chose to lie to your children about who I am. You've made your choices, and now you'll live with them. Ethan and Lila exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of shock and betrayal. They thought they had me under their thumb, but they'd misjudged me. They didn't realize the useless old lady they ridiculed held all the power. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Waking each morning with a renewed sense of purpose, I realized being alone doesn't mean being lonely. And sometimes the family you build through respect and shared values is stronger than the one you're born into. Ethan and Lila thought they were teaching me a lesson when they shamed me in that lobby. They were right in one sense. I did learn something. I learned my own worth, and that I'm worth standing up for, even if I have to do it myself. That realization changed everything. This story is fictional but draws from real experiences. Names and locations have been altered to protect those involved. We share this not to judge, but to inspire reflection. How many mothers endure silent suffering in their own families? I'm curious, what would you do in my shoes? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace? Or would you confront the pain to reclaim your voice? Share your thoughts, because every story can light the way for someone else. May you always find strength.